In our last story, we met Su Xiaoxiao, a courtesan by Westlake, whose love was soft, poetic, and filled with a quiet, heartbreaking longing. Her tale was one of whispered promises and fragile beauty, a love story painted with the delicate strokes of a watercolor artist. But tonight's story tells of a very different kind of woman, not a singer of verses, but a leader of men. Her name was Princess Pingyang, daughter of a fallen dynasty, sister to a future emperor, and the only woman in Chinese history to lead her own army to found a new empire. This isn't a story of gentle sighs, but of battle cries, not of waiting by a window, but of charging into the fray. Her love wasn't written in poems, but forged in the fires of war and loyalty. The year is 617. The once mighty Sui Empire was collapsing under the weight of its own corruption and tyranny. Rebellion burned across the land like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Emperor Yang was a tyrant, and the people had had enough. Amidst this chaos, a nobleman named Li Yuan, Pingyang's father, made a fateful decision. He would rise up against the crumbling dynasty and fight to claim the mandate of heaven. While her father fled the capital Chang'an to raise troops in the north, Pingyang remained trapped in the heart of the lion's den. She and her husband, Su Xiaoxiao, were under the watchful, suspicious eyes of Sui officials. Spies lurked in every shadow, and soldiers patrolled every street. Su Xiaoxiao knew he had to leave to join his father-in-law, but he worried deeply for his wife. "What will you do?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. "It's too dangerous for you to travel." Pingyang looked at him, her gaze steady and resolute. "You go," she said. "I am a woman, and it's easier for me to hide. I will find my own way." She could have hidden, waiting for rescue, like a damsel in distress. She could have disguised herself and tried to slip away unnoticed. But Pingyang was not built for hiding. She was built for leading. As soon as her husband was gone, she sprang into action. She didn't just hide, she began to build. She sold her lavish jewelry, her silks, and her estates, converting her aristocratic wealth into a war chest. With this money, she didn't buy a safe passage, she bought food. She opened her granaries and began distributing grain to the starving peasants and refugees, the forgotten victims of the empire's decay. Word of her generosity and courage spread like wildfire. The hungry, the poor, the desperate, and the disillusioned flocked to her side. They saw in her not just a noble lady, but a beacon of hope in a world plunged into darkness. With these followers, she didn't just form a refugee camp, she raised a banner of her own. She established a command center and began to forge an army. It was an audacious, unheard of act. A woman, a princess, leading a rebellion. The people called her force the Army of the Lady. It was a name spoken with reverence and awe, and she was no distant commander, directing from the safety of a fortified keep. Princess Pingyang led from the front. Eyewitnesses described her as calm, strategic, and utterly fearless. She rode into battle alongside her soldiers, her armor shining beneath the dust and grime of war. She wasn't just a symbol, she was their general. She enforced strict discipline, forbidding her soldiers from looting, raping, or pillaging, stark contrast to the other rebel factions and the emperor's own troops. Her army brought order and protection wherever it went, and because of this, they were welcomed as liberators, not conquerors. Her forces swelled from a few hundred to tens of thousands. Among her most dedicated followers was a young, brilliant general. His name is lost to the grander scope of history, overshadowed by the emperors and princes he served, but his loyalty to Pingyang ran deeper than words. He was her right hand, her most trusted commander. He saw her not just as a princess or a leader, but as the embodiment of justice. He guarded her through treacherous mountain passes and sudden ambushes. He stood by her side as they planned strategies late into the night, the flickering lamplight casting long shadows on the campaign maps. While she commanded the respect of thousands, she trusted him above all others. Their bond was forged not in the perfumed gardens of a palace, but on the rugged, unforgiving battlefields of a nation in turmoil. Together they rode through smoke and blood, their shared purpose a silent understanding between them. They weren't fighting for personal glory or the spoils of war. They were fighting for the hope of a lasting peace, for a future where people didn't have to starve in the streets. And as the Sui Empire crumbled around them, piece by bloody piece, something new began to rise from the ashes. It was more than just an army, more than just a rebellion. A new dynasty was on the horizon. And perhaps, amidst the chaos and the clang of steel, a new kind of love story was being written, one of shared courage, unwavering trust, and a fight for a better world. Pingyang's army became a critical piece of her father's strategy. How did she and her loyal general conquer the capital? And what destiny awaited them in the new Tang dynasty they helped to create? What became of this warrior princess and the man who stood by her side through it all? We'll uncover the next chapter of this incredible true story in part 2. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If you were as captivated by Princess Pingyang's story as I am, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the conclusion. See you next time.